Hi, this is Carrie Canary Quilts, and it's week 29 of the Dear Jane Quilt Along for 2024. This is the quilt along that I'm doing this year. So hit the subscribe button, notification bell if you're new here and you want to follow along, you want to quilt along with us, or you just want to hang out and do the other fun stuff we got going on here. So this week we have a light week in blocks. Yay! I feel like we've had some major modifications and some labor-intensive blocks in the last few weeks. So this week we kind of get a break. I don't know how that happens when you pick them randomly, but this week we get a little bit of a break. So I am going to fill in my color quilt here, and then I'm going to go through the blocks real quick. I'm not using any variations, and I'm not using any modifications, so it'll be pretty easy. Well, let's get started. So we have C3, Rayelle's Fence, E13, Moth in a Web, J7, Chicken Tracks. I feel like we've done one like this before. I don't know. There's so many blocks here. It's hard to tell. Oh, yep. Up there, it's C10, 11, 12. C12. Except that one had 5. This one has 4. All right. L7, Town Square. And BR3 attic window, and we need to rotate that 180 degrees. There we go. Filling in. I love it. It's so much fun to do this and see what it's kind of going to look like. All right, let's head over to the block work table and see what we got going on this week. So we have C3, Rayelle's Fence. I mean, just looking at this, you know it's going to be easy. It's just in strips. All the sections are one strip of the block, so easy. That's what it looks like when you print it. Yep, easy. And I don't even think that's going to be that labor intensive, so that's good. Next is E13, Moth in a Web, and this is a combination of foundation paper piecing and applique. The applique are these little triangles right here. So when we go over to foundation, and that's a pretty straightforward foundation paper piecing. This is what it looks like when you print it out. So that's not going to be that hard. That's fun. And then we've got templates, and we need to, let's see, we need G, this little piece. That's our applique. So you can delete all these pieces and just print out our G for our applique. All right, on to the next. And, oh, this one. Yep, we've done this one before. We've just done the corners in the center. So, I mean, I don't even know if I should show this one because we've done it before. This is what it looks like. All the 9 patches are this. They're each basically their own strip, except for up here in this left corner and down here in this right corner. So this is probably going to be a labor-intensive block, but we've done it before. We know what we're in for. That's what it looks like, all these little 3-piece sections. Let's see. Next one is L7, Town Center. Is that what it was called? Town Square. That's what it looks like. And foundation is by row. So there's not a lot in this one either. Yeah, this is going to be a fun week. And then we have BR3 attic window. No mods here. And the foundation is, look at that, 3 sections down here with the one on the top. So 4 sections. There we go. Easy week. I like it. Let me know what you think. Hit the subscribe button, notification bell, and let's get started on our blocks. We're starting off week 29 with a really easy block. Every one of these strips is put together exactly the same. They're even numbered exactly the same. So I'll quickly go through one of these with you to show you how I put it together. And then we can just put the rows together. I may just put the rows together. Let's see. The squares, these white squares are all the white squares you see here, and then these rectangles are inside. Same thing with our rectangles and squares for the dark. and then we have one square that goes in the middle that's dark. All right, so let's get it set up and do this very easy block. Oh, this is what we're going for. It's called Rayelle's Fence. I'm all set up to do this section. I've already gone ahead and done all of the other sections. Didn't take very long. What I'm doing is my first piece is going to be the rectangle. I'm going to line it up, and then I'm going to just put tack it down with some thread, like right here, and then I'll be able to trim these two sides. There we go. I've tacked it down. I am going to actually go ahead and do both sides at the same time while I'm over at the machine. So I am going to trim both sides up. There we go. Now I can take my white squares and just line them up here. Right here are my seam allowances, so plenty big. And I'm going to sew on the line in between A1 and A4 and A1 and A2. I'm going to do both at the same time. There's my first two pieces, and now we can trim for both ends of this piece. All right, I got both sides trimmed. Now I can line up my dark squares and sew on the line between A2 and A3 and A4 and A5 when I get this piece on. And then we'll be done. And I am going to get my sections trimmed up, and I'll just get it laid out real quick. There we go, we're all trimmed up, and you can lay it out by section or just make sure you've got the big part in the middle and then you're alternating on each side. So I'm going to get this put together, and we started off with an easy one. There you go, that is a cool looking block. That's C3 Rayelle's Fence. Off to an easy start today. Next one up is E13 Moth in a Web. This is what it's going to look like. This is a pieced and applique. So we have our little applique piece back here, and that's what these points are. I know I have it upside down. Let's turn it over. That's what these points are going to be. So this one, again, it's not really going to be that hard. We have two exactly the same, and then these just have two pieces and the rest are singulars. So these are my corner pieces, these triangles. These rectangles are inside here. The square and the triangles go right here for white. We have large triangles in the dark, and then we have small triangles in the dark, and then here is my applique, which is also going to be dark. So let me get set up and we'll do one of these inside pieces. So before we get started with this, I did put pieces together. So these singular pieces, I actually sewed my fabric to the paper so it will stay in place when I trim it. And that's what I did with the two dark triangles and all four of the light triangles. I put a big stitch right along the bottom. I put these together real easy. And then I put one of these together, and that didn't take very long either. So to do this one, we're going to start right here with this half square triangle, and then add the square, and then add the rectangle. And that's what I have left here. So I'm just going to take my two triangles and put them together right now. And the white one is number 1, so I'm going to put that on the bottom. I'm going to lay it so it's 1/4 inch over between 1 and 2, and also over 4. And then I will sew on the line between B1 and B2. There we go, first two pieces. We can trim now between B2 and B3, and we are going to add our white square. And we want to make sure it's 1/4 inch past this line right here. And we will sew between B2 and B3. There's our third piece. Now we're going to do the rectangle, B4. Get that trimmed up. And I made these plenty big. They go right off the paper. So we can sew on the line below B4. Let's get everything trimmed up, get it laid out so we can put it together. There's my pieces all trimmed up. There's my bow tie in the middle. And then we've got our dark pieces on the outside. We have the pieces with this white strip on opposite ends. And then we have our white corners. And then I've got my applique for last. So we'll just put these two together. And I think I'm going to iron my seams open. Put these two seams together, or put these two pieces together. And then we're going to put these two on the outside of this centerpiece. Then once these two are on, we can put these two black pieces. And then the same thing here. Put two corner pieces on. And then we'll be able to put the other two corner pieces on. So that's what I'm going to do, and I'm going to iron my pieces open, and then I'll come back and put my applique on. I got my block put together. I actually ironed towards the corners. It seemed flatter when I did that. So what I'm going to do is I put one piece on, and all I did was center the bottom of this on that point. So that's what I'm going to do, and my point lines up with that point. So that's how I'm going to put my pieces on, and I'm going to get them fused down. There we go. E13, Moth in a Web. That's an interesting name for the block. Another cool looking block and an easy one. Next up is J7 Chicken Tracks. This is what it's going to look like. And this one is another easy paper piece. The only thing is it's going to take a little bit of time to put these together, but biggest thing you got to do is follow the numbers because they're different. Are they different? Yeah, this one starts in the middle. This one starts in the middle. So do these. So that's about the only thing you need to do. So I'll put together one of these big ones, and then we'll put this block together, but it's not going to be hard. I've got these large squares are obviously these big ones, and then I've got white and dark squares for the rest of them, same size. If you like my cut pieces that I'm using, you can find them on my website, and that link is in the description down below this video. I put together all these pieces. It really didn't take me as long as I thought it would. I've got the set of 3, and then these with the 4 pieces in it. This one has 4 pieces. It starts in the middle with 1. 2 and 3 are on each side, and then we'll add 4. And these are the pieces I need. 2 dark squares, a white square, and a large white square. Drawn it out on the back. 1 and 2 is right there. I need 2 small squares. I'm just going to put them together right now. And number 1 is white. So I'm going to make white be on the bottom. I'm going to put it about 1/4 inch over between 1 and 2, and make sure you have it 1/4 inch right here at this seam also. And this is my seam allowance over here. So I will now sew between B1 and B2. There's my first 2 pieces. I have trimmed for my 3rd piece, which is going to be the other dark square. I'm just going to line it up exactly with my white piece. And then we'll sew right here between B1 and B3. And I always lock stitch at intersections like these. First 3 pieces are on. They're exactly like all of these sections of just 3 pieces. I have trimmed my 1/4 inch for 4. Take my big square, and it's bigger than the paper. Line it up, and we'll sew on the line next to B4. I'm going to get all these pieces trimmed, and then I'll show you how they get laid out. Here's the pieces trimmed up and laid out. So what we have are these pieces with the big squares. You can see that they have the squares, that the squares are in the corner, and then this set of 3 is on the inside here in each row, and then we'll put these together with that centerpiece. So we'll make a row here, and we'll make a row here. For the center row, we'll have this in the center, and then we'll have 2 pieces right here that will hook onto that, and then we can put these 3 together and hook it onto that, and then we can put our rows together. So the only thing that I really want to pay attention to, I'll probably iron everything open, and this seam right here, I'm going to iron towards that centerpiece because this one is ironed towards that. Other than that, I'm going to iron them all open, and then we can put the rows together. There we go, J7 Chicken Tracks. That's what we're going for. That's what we got. I said it was probably going to be a little tedious to put together, but it really didn't take me as long as I thought it would to put it together. And another cool looking easy block. Our last center square is L7 Town Square, and this is another pretty easy one to put together. This is what it's going to look like when it's done. If you've been doing this Dear Jane journey with me, we've done all of these shapes before. So we have a square and a square here, and then we're just going to add two onto the ends of that square and a square. This one's pretty easy. I did change this. I've done this quite a bit where I put the first piece in the middle and then the second piece in the corner. You could change it so you do all the corners. This could be 5, and then this could be 6, and this could be 7. That's probably how I'll do it. I'll just do the inside first and then go towards the outside. So let me go through my pieces here. I've got these white squares, which are all the white that you see in this piece. The dark triangles are for the square and the square, and then the rectangles are all out here on the outside. So let me get set up. Here's the first 2 outer rows that I put together. Very easy. Here's the center row that I'm going to put together. I changed this. I told you before I changed this to be the first piece. Put my second piece out here, and I'm going to build this square and a square out. I made this 6 and 7, but I actually could put these 2 on at the same time once this is on, and then I can put these 2 on at the same time. So it's up to you how you want to do it. That's how I'm going to do it. So the first thing I want to do is take one of my white squares, come to the back, lay it over my number 1 piece. It's plenty big, and 1/4 of an inch over number 2. I'm going to take one of my triangles, line it up so that my points line up right here, and then we'll sew on the line between A1 and A2. There's my first 2 pieces. Now I'm going to turn it over. I'm going to go to A3, and we can trim it up and put our next triangle on. Line up the points, and then I'm going to sew on the line here between A1 and A3, and I'm going to repeat the exact same thing for 4 and 5. There's my square and a square completed. I can come over here, and I am going to trim on both sides of my center. And so when I am over at the machine, I can do both of these at the same time. So I'm going to take one of my white squares, line it up, sew on the line between the square and a square and this piece, and I'm going to repeat for the other white piece on the other side. There's those 2 white squares, so I'm going to repeat for the outer dark rectangles and put those on. I am going to then trim all my pieces up. And since there's just 3 rows to put together, I'm going to put them together, and I probably will iron towards this outer row. There we go, L7 Town Square. I did iron towards the outer rows. It made a flatter seam for me. So that was real easy to put together. This has been a fun week. We are on to our border block for the week, which is BR3. It's attic window. This is what it's going to look like. These are my pieces I'm using, and I put my cut pieces out on my website. If you like the cut pieces that I use, you can use my cut pieces. So that link is in the description down below the video. So I'm going to use my cheat sheet here instead of explaining where all of these go, because that's what I'm going to have to do. In looking at this, if I put this piece together, it'll apply to the rest of these pieces. So let me get set up to do that. So I've drawn out my seams on this side, and we're going in order here. And we're going to start with our first piece is going to be a white rectangle. So you could do this and you wouldn't have to cut it, or you could lay it on there, make sure there's coverage. And what I've been doing is tacking down my piece inside the seam lines with some thread, which I'm going to do right now. I've tacked it down, so now I can actually cut my seam allowance. This way, at least this way, I know I have coverage on one instead of trying to scooch it around and make sure I have coverage. So now we can take our triangle and it gets oriented like that. So I'm going to make sure that I have 1/4 of an inch past this seam over here. Here's my seam allowance. So I've got plenty of coverage here. Now I'm going to sew between B1 and B2. And that's how I get started on B1 and B2 with my cut pieces. Okay, there's the first 2 pieces. Now we can trim between B2 and B3, which I'm pretty close there. And now we're going to get a white triangle and it gets oriented like this. So again, we want to make sure we're 1/4 of an inch over the next seam over here. And we're going to sew between B3 and B2. I am going to do the exact same thing for all these triangles right here. There are all my triangles put on, and I just repeated the exact same process for the rest of the triangles as I did for the first 2. Next up, we are going to be putting these 2 pieces on. I have trimmed for B7. I have a square ready to go for B7, just going to line it up. Seam allowances are right there. We have plenty of coverage, so I'm going to sew between B6 and B7. There's B7. B8 is a rectangle, and it's going to get set long ways. So just want to make sure you're on the outside of your seam allowances and sew between B7 and B8. I'm going to get everything trimmed up and we'll see how these pieces fit together. Here's my pieces trimmed up and laid out. So I have section A, B, C, and D. So we'll put these 2 together. And there's notches here, so let's see how they work. All right. The notch on my A section right here lines up with the edge of my B, and then it leaves just a smidgen of a tail right up here on the right hand side. So I'm going to sew between these 2, and I think I'll iron towards A. I'll see how that goes. There we go. A and B are put together, and I did iron towards A. I felt like less stress on the seams with these points. Now we can put C on, and let's see how this lands. Not in love with the notches, so I think what I'll do is go through the points and line it up from there. So I'm going to go through that point and that point right there, and use that to line it up. And when that lines up, this notch on B and this straight edge on C actually line up. So there you go. That worked. So I'm going to get these sewn together, and I think I'll iron towards C. There's C on, and I iron towards C. Now we'll put D on. D on. Like Deion Sanders. So it looks like the point of this lines up with the edge, but I am going to again double check with my points here. Let's just send it through real quick. Let's get that straightened out. And yes, that's what's happening over here. The point of C is lining up with the edge of D. All right. Let's get that sewn together. And I'll iron towards, I think I'll iron towards D. Since I'm running into this seam I've already ironed right there. There we go, BR3 attic window. That's a cool looking block, and I like it in that green that I chose. So, what do you think? That was a pretty easy week and we got some really pretty blocks out of it. That's it for this week. It was pretty easy. And we got some really pretty blocks out of it. I'm really happy with these. I don't know if I'm happy because they were so easy or if I really do think they're beautiful. But I don't know. I think they're all beautiful. What do you think? I like the green too. That looks really nice in that. All right, so since it was so easy, there's not much to say. So I'm going to populate my quilt, my photo quilt. So how is your photo quilt coming? Is anybody else doing a photo quilt? All right, we've got C3, Rayelle's Fence, and E13, Moth in a Web, E13, J7, Chicken Tracks, and L7, Town Square. Ooh, we almost got all the L's filled in. And then the bottom row 3, attic window. And I did remember to rotate it this time. So there you go. I'm getting so excited for this. It's really fun. I don't know what you're thinking. How are you doing on your blocks? I know I've had a few people contact me and they just found out about this quilt along and they're going to try to catch up. So welcome aboard. I appreciate you. And if you are new, hit the subscribe button, notification bell, so you can go on this journey and all the other fun stuff we got going on the channel. But anyway, I'll see you in the next video. Bye.